Please take a second, pause the video, and read this disclaimer.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back. I'm doing another literature review. This time we're taking a look at doing a barbell back squat with a band around the knees. Now, in this study, titled Sex Difference in Lower Limb Electromyography and Kinematics when Using Resistance Bands During Barbell Back Squat by Shahab Alizadeh et al. What they basically found was using three different types of resistance bands, like the one here around my knee. They used three different resistances. One was, let me see here, about 1.6 kilograms, 3.3 kilograms, and 6.4 kilograms. If you want to know, basically multiply by like 2.2, and that's where you're looking at. So you're looking at something a little bit over 12, something a little bit over 6, and something a little over like 3.2. That's the amount of resistance the bands offered at the knee when they were pulling in. Because the idea of the study was, what if I take males, what if I take females, and what if I take different strength bands, put them around the knees, and have these athletes, have these people do that back squat, have that barbell here, do that squat, drive the heels, come up. What happens if I use different amounts of bands? What muscles are going to be recruited more, and which ones are going to be recruited less? There's a lot of studies that have actually done things similar to this. So these guys were going to look and say, okay, we're going to do a very standardized, the band goes here, the weight in the barbell is this, and the weight for the bands is this. And we're going to really quantify the amount of band. We're not going to use like, this was a blue band, this was a green band, this was a red. No, we're going to go in there, we're going to quantify exactly how much kilograms of force are pulling the knees together. Because that's the idea. When you're doing the squat, pulling the knees together, how much force, what muscles are you going to recruit to keep them apart to then do that squat? That's the idea. So they took a look at several different muscles. They took a look at the glute med. That's the muscle that lives over here on the outside of the hip. It's the one that's responsible for kicking the leg out to the side. It's also responsible for like single leg balance largely. It helps stabilize you, right? So that if it was very weak, your hip would pop out. And that's why when you see people that are walking like they're voguing, it's actually probably a sign of hip weakness called Trendelenburg. You're welcome. Use that at a party sometime. They also took a look at glute max. We all know what glute max is. That's the leg that kicks back. It's the one that, if you want to do the booty builder, to get the booty nice and big, that's the glute max. Biceps femoris. This one's tricky because you have rectus femoris and you have biceps femoris. Rectus lives in the front, biceps lives in the back. And then you have vastus lateralis. Now we're into the quads. So you've got medialis, which lives on the inside of your thigh, kind of. It's closer to the inside. It's not like inside, but it's like closer to the inside. And then lateralis, which lives out here, and those are two parts of the quad. Finally, they took a look at the erector spinae. That's the muscles in your back that are keeping you upright while you're engaged driving with the barbell. Now they took a look at men versus women because the knee and the hips and the ankles and lower leg athletes like soccer or even upper extremity athletes like basketball athletes, this is critically important because if you have weakness and your knees collapse in, that puts you way more at risk for specific injuries that can limit your amount of play. Specifically, think about like your ACL tears, think about your meniscus injuries, think about things like that. And you can see just how important it is that you have the strength that if you're doing a squat, like a jump or a landing, that your knees don't buckle in and you put all that force into the knees. Now, why is this important? Well, the study highlights the fact that men and women have different Q angles. The Q angle just means that it's the angle of your femur driving in down towards the knee. Males typically have narrower pelvises. When they have a narrower pelvis, that means we have a straighter shot straight down to the knee, so our Q angle isn't as large. Females typically have wider pelvises. That means when the femur is leaving the pelvis and going down towards the knee, it's usually at a greater angle. That puts you more at risk for knee injuries. So what they wanted to find was if we use these different bands, we use these different athletes, males versus females, is there a difference between males and females, which we're expecting there is because of the Q angle? And two, what are those differences? What muscles are being recruited more than with one band versus the other, or what muscles are being recruited less with one band versus the other? Here's what they found. You made it all the way through the video. Good job. Here's the final results. they found is that males produce greater vastus lateralis activity when using the black and the gold resistance band. Which ones are the black and the gold? The black band was the 3.3 kilograms, so you're looking at a little bit more than 6 pounds. And the gold was the 6.4 kilograms multiplied by 2.2, you're north of 12 pounds. So with greater bands, those are the two heavier bands. The other one that they're not talking about was a recoil resistance one. With the two stronger bands, they saw greater vastus lateralis. Does this make sense? Of course this makes sense. The vastus lateralis lives out here in the quad. Having to brace and fire that quad, you're using that guy a little bit more. What they found also was when using the gold resistance band, which was the highest, remember again, think that 13-pound one, the glute medius muscle activation was higher compared to the other resistance bands. Does this also make sense? Of course this also makes sense, because the higher the resistance band trying to pull my knees together, the more I'm gonna have to fight to keep them apart, so that when I go to squat, my knees don't collapse in. Those are two things that make perfect sense. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of it real quick. Why? Why is all this important? Well, like I said earlier, it's about injury prevention. That's one of the goals here. They want to see that these muscles being activated, they're all trying to prevent this from happening. So here is a little bit from the discussion that I thought was important. Stronger resistance bands showed greater vastus lateralis activation in males compared to females with the back squat. So while you're doing that back squat and you're fighting to keep those knees from coming in, you're firing the outside of your quads more. It appears that males recruit greater amount of vastus lateralis activity to overcome that knee being pulled together movement. And that the stronger resistance bands would cause more of that in order for them to have to fire it more in order to resist that movement. So the greater the resistance, the greater the muscle firing. Makes perfect sense. Let's see here. They go on to talk about why it's stronger male versus female. Basically what they talk about is one reason could be that the higher muscle activation was just because the relative strength differences. The guys were just stronger than the women, so you got a stronger muscle signal. They go on to talk about, here, another crucial point that I highlighted. Highlighting is wonderful. Regardless of sex, so male versus female, the glute med showed higher muscle activity when using the gold resistance band, the highest resistance band, when compared to all other conditions. And this finding was agreed upon and agreed with two previous studies. So if you haven't saw my last video, there's a lot of this debate of, okay, what does the band actually do in what position? We talked about the hip thrust and the glute bridge and how the band actually didn't help with glute med activation as much as it did glute max. So these researchers, and this is the trend that I want to take a look at, was, okay, what if I get rid of the ground? What if we're not doing a hip bridge or a hip thrust? What if I'm just doing a squat? Is it true then too? And the studies are saying no. Putting the band around the knees while doing the squat, that's getting you that glute med activation that you're looking for. Putting the band here, doing this, makes sense. Doing it laying on the ground, which do you think it would make sense? No, you're actually just working the glute max more than the glute med. The stronger resistance bands induced a higher amount of knee force, being they measured how much the knees came inward. So the higher the bands, of course, the more the knees were pulled together doing the barbell squat. And that's just common sense. The glute med activation would need to increase muscle activity in order to maintain a neutral knee alignment. So when they increase the band resistance trying to pull the knees together, the glute med has to fire more to keep them apart. We already know that. What they said that was interesting, the power absorption shift from the hip to the ankle, which would result in decreased power production, is what they saw in the previous one. So when they took a look at it this time, they said the glute med muscle activation was higher during the ascending phase, which is supported by previous research, specific previous research. What does that mean? On the way down, the glute meds aren't firing that much. Well, they are firing, but not as much as when you're coming up. That's when they're firing the most. And if you do this while streaming a video like I am, you bet you're gonna feel it when you come up. It's not so much when you come down. It actually kind of feels like you're not really doing that much different when you're down here. Probably because you're being assisted, because your femurs want to move out of the way, but when you come up, keeping them in the same position, that's when I feel it working. They also saw that there was decreased vastus medialis muscle activity when using the higher resistance band. And in my book, that probably chalks up to the fact that if your knees are being pulled together, you're going to be firing the guy that's most lateral to try and keep that knee position in, to try and fire out here in the quads. You're probably not going to want to recruit the medialis guy to help assist coming in a little bit. Your body's probably just firing the quad that's most lateral to help assist with that abduction to keep the knees from collapsing again. And to me, that just makes sense. And they go on to talk about the differences between males and females and what they saw there. But the big difference and the biggest importance here is what's being fired and why. So they took a look at this and said, we want to take a look at male versus female athletes. I'm taking a look at using this for a training environment. If I'm doing a barbell back squat at the gym and I have a 13-pound resistance band around my knees, and I go down to do that squat and come up, and I'm trying to do it 2 for 1, I'm trying to get my glute max and my glute medius to fire, am I doing something that is actually going to recruit the muscles that I want? And the answer is yes, it is. That's the point of this study that I'm taking away for my personal use in the gym. That is what I wanted to share with you guys. So if you see someone at the gym doing that back squat, having that band around their knees, and you think, I bet you that that's not doing anything, we're wrong. The science says that it is. Now, how much is it really leading to the gains that you want? I don't know, but if you're burning for time and you have a home gym, you're like, you know what, I'm going to slap a band around the knees and go knock out some squats real quick to get my glute medius because I don't have time to focus on just them today, you're on the right track. That's the takeaway. And this movement versus the hip bridge or the hip thrust with the band, this is the one that's going to actually get you the bang for your buck, that's going to actually get those glute medius firing. It's going to help you recruit the muscles you want when you're in the gym. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, check out the Discord, check out the website. And now everybody stay healthy, stay fit, and stay awesome, and I will catch you all in the next video.